Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Itzli-Ra, the podcast where we talk about all things related to spirituality, enlightenment, and
Everyday life.
my name is Carlos.
I'm Veronica.
And today we're going to actually talk about Kundalini Yoga. We didn't get to talk about it in the last episode because we went on this energetic tangent of stuff that we felt like needed to get talked about. So in this
Yep.
episode, we're going to talk about Kundalini Yoga, the impact of Kundalini Yoga in your life, some of the challenges with Kundalini Yoga, because there's a lot of that, and what to beware of and be careful of. But before we get into that, we got to talk about the Pope because the
Yes.
Pope was just
Very relevant.
elected. It's super relevant, and I think it's a pretty momentous occasion for the Catholic Church in that we have an American Pope,
Yeah.
which is kind of cool.
Huge.
But it turns out
Yeah.
like this dude was I was doing some research on him, and they were talking about how he's from Chicago, but he went to Peru and he spent a lot of time in Peru
Right.
there. But his origins, they were the people, because people love internet sleuthing or whatever. His origins are actually from New Orleans, and apparently he's also Black Creole, which is really interesting, right? And I'm like, ooh,
Interesting.
that's kind of cool. So he's got like some magic mojo going on there, right? Like his
Mojo.
his bloodline is very much like that. So I'm like, oh, that's kind of interesting that he is, he's kind of
Mixed.
mixing
Was he
everything. So he's
Latino? Is he Latino too? Wasn't
I
there
I
like isn't his mom like Martinez or something
I
like
think
that?
his
Did I catch that?
grandparents were the ones that were from New Orleans and Creole and stuff like that. So I think that's the case, but I'm
Okay.
not quite sure what
Well,
his
his dad
parents,
was
what their
French,
origin
right?
are.
That's what they said. So that's where I'm sure the Creole comes from,
Let me
if
see.
that's the case. But I thought his mom also had a last name Martinez, but I'm making an assumption that Martinez is Latin or indigenous of some sort.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so his it says that his family roots, his parents Mildred Martinez, and the dad is
right.
Louis Prevost. They're a Spanish, Franco-Italian, and Creole. So yeah,
There you go. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So he's mixed, like the rest of us are,
it's
which is
so
quite
it's so interesting.
interesting.
So the mother, Mildred Martinez, is of Creole, Spanish, and Haitian ancestry, which is
Oh,
kind of cool with New Orleans
an
roots, which
interesting.
is which
Yeah,
is
it's a
pretty
very
awesome.
interesting lineage.
And
Yeah,
then the father, Louis Prevost, French and Italian. And
interesting. I
then
wonder if that's
the
where the
maternal grandparents, Joseph Martinez and Louise Bacqui, were originally from New Orleans, identified
interesting.
as Black or mixed in early records. So, and then they were in New Orleans, and then they moved to Chicago.
The interesting thing about black and mixed, it could be that they were indigenous
Possible.
because many indigenous people that were around that area were kind of taken that away. We were taken away and labeled as being black
So
versus indigenous.
what's super wild about this is like I wonder because like if the grandparents and stuff like that were from New Orleans and they're like Haitian, and I wonder if the Pope knows some like voodoo action, right?
Really?
It's possible. I
Well,
mean, I'm pretty sure.
I mean, if you really think about it, look at our abuelos and abuelas, our grandmothers and grandparents, right? They brought in something, right? And many that are Catholic, right, still practice or have these rituals that are set in their indigenous ways, right?
Hmm.
So, be it hoodoo, be it voodoo, be it Santeria, you know, you name it. Look at our mom that
Yep.
would do things, with the huevo and the limpias and all that kind of thing. So I wouldn't put it past that. He probably witnessed a lot of that and was very familiar. And that's why he was very comfortable being in Peru, right?
Exactly.
Because in Peru, they have a lot of other um, rituals and ways of being. And he could have probably related a lot more. And people may have reflected possibly themselves in him. And it's very interesting that at this time he has chosen the name of Leo the 14th. And Leo is a strong name, right? We can say it's lion, but it's also fire, right? And all those popes that have been Leo have been very strong and almost went into battle. So it's a name of battle almost.
Oh,
That's what
interesting.
it's like reflecting back. There was one, I can't remember which Leo it was, that he faced Attila the Hun and turned him away. So there's so many things that can be created or narratives to be played around, this Pope, but we're not going to see until, the next few years what his stances are and everything. I think the other thing is that they chose the 8th was the feast of the apparition of Saint Michael, which is another interesting thing because Saint Michael is one that is led in battle.
Hmm.
Um, and Michael crosses all sorts of spirituality, not necessarily just Catholicism,
That's
but
correct.
others that have these beliefs and even across the main religions as well. So I think that it was fascinating. And then the person who created the St. Michael prayer was Pope Leo. I can't remember which number he was, but I thought also that was interesting. So there's many ironic things
There's a lot of
that,
significance in that date.
right, right. There's very much so significance in that name because he is going to be leading in a really tough time,
Right. Right.
a
And
very, very
I think
tough
his
time.
stance is very much balance. Like he brings a balance to it because he can live in two worlds.
Mhm.
And I know that a lot of people wanted a pope that was much more conservative because that's how the U.S. is leaning. It's much more conservative. But I
Yeah,
mean, when you think about the world, there has to be balance. You have to see both sides of something in order to be truly a great leader. And I think that's kind of what he possesses. And I'm hoping that because of that, his leadership will be helpful and it'll help bring. Right now, the church is just losing people left and right. I
right.
think a lot of
Yeah,
religions are it's happening as this awakening happens.
right,
People are moving
right.
away from organized religion. So it's going to kind of be up to him to figure out a
Mhm.
way to make the church meaningful again in some
Right.
way, spiritually, energetically, to attract people.
Yeah, I think if he were allowed, if he were to be allowing women to actually serve as priests, that would be quite an accomplishment within the church, and I think it would attract a lot of people back.
Or
I
who
don't know
knows?
if that is the
Maybe
time
Veronica,
for it.
maybe because like what you said, I mean, he leads battle, right? Maybe it's a battle with the
Mhm.
church itself, and the church
I
he's going to break the church. Like he's going to just it needs
Well,
to be
that's
torn
good that you
down,
say that. It's
right?
cool that you say it because Nostradamus, I think, prophesied something like the black pope, in that they thought that Saint Francis was that, and the death of the pope, the new one that would come in, was going to break the church. So, but breaking the church, that doesn't mean that it kills it. It could
No,
mean that it just reforms all of it. So we're going to
correct.
see in these next 4 years,
Oh, that just gave me the
there's
chills. Ooh,
yeah,
that was
a lot of hope for
right.
for that. Just to see truly everybody in unity, regardless of whatever gender you are, um, whatever type of person you are, just seeing you as a human being versus your X, Y, and Z, or I'm greater than you, I'm less than you. Because we're really all created equal when we come here. We all come through the same way.
Yep.
We all, unfortunately, the what we're birthed into is completely different sometimes, and that paves who we are because of our conditioning and whatever. But ultimately, I think that we all start out the same.
Yeah, and I think that this is just the beginning of things like that. We'll see a lot of institutions break, and
Yeah.
they're going to get torn to the ground, and everything is going to end up being rebuilt in some way that is more. It's geared more towards humanity and helping humanity as opposed to taking advantage of humanity. But I think the challenge with that is that there's a lot of energies that are competing against each other because there's still the old energy of like we need to
Mm-hmm.
keep people oppressed. We need to keep them
Right.
at a certain level of
Certain level.
vibration so that we can
Mhm.
continue to have that inequality and keep everybody from actually moving up together.
Right. Because in the minds that if there's too many on the same level, then how is the economy going to work? There's not going to
Right.
be enough for everybody. But in reality, if it's done right, yeah, it could be. And yes, the earth can thrive. And if you really think about it, and I'm just going to say that, do we need all this junk? Do we need all this junk? Do we need all this junk?
Right.
Just saying,
Right.
just saying.
Right.
Like, why do we have to get our kids all this plastic garbage when they're babies when it's just going to get thrown out? Right. Like, what are we doing? Like all of that. We got to think about those kinds of things. And yeah, sure, like, material things are cool to have, but I think they're filling a void as well,
Yeah.
because we haven't done enough work on ourselves. So we want that serotonin and that dopamine hit. So we buy something makes us feel good. And then what? What happens? You get tired of it.
Well, and
And then it just sits there.
I think the other thing that's pretty fascinating and for a lot of people very scary is as AI continues to evolve, as it continues to move forward. I think a lot of the mundane jobs that people do are going to get taken over by AI agents, and then humanity itself is going to have to figure out how it evolves. It's going to be a forcing function to evolve humanity in some way, and I don't know what that way is, and it's going to be very, very challenging for some people to move and evolve. And I think it's going to cause a lot of unrest because people don't know how to deal in to live in a world like that because they've been conditioned so much through society and everything else to have these
Mhm.
different levels and to be doing only these jobs that they think that they are qualified for
Or,
when they can do so much more. And so
right.
that's going to open up a whole new level of consciousness, I think. But there's going to be a lot of people that are just they don't like change, so it's gonna cause a lot of unrest.
Uh, I think that's just how, when we're shifting into new phases, that's what happens. I'm sure when the Industrial Revolution came around, I mean, how shocking is that? People are coming across on boats and dying to get to a new land, quote unquote, and then to be thrown into these factories and into these types of conditions and stuff, and not knowing where they belong. It must have been intense, for that time frame. And I'm sure at points with these famines that would happen or whatever was going on within these other countries that caused them to come here, they probably thought it was the end of the world.
I'm sure.
Yeah. And I think that's what the rhetoric is now. It's, the apocalypse and all these things, but
End of
apocalypse is a
days. Yeah,
change. It's change.
it's
It's
change.
change. It's change. And people have a hard time with change and the uncertainty and transitioning. And then that's what
Mhm.
we're in. We're in this big old transition. And everybody's going to be, in their mind's going to be hurting for a while. But do you really have to hurt, right? Do you really have to hurt? Let's start thinking about like drawing on your own resilience and see where you can pivot, right? Which direction you can go, who you can seek for help, all those kinds of things, that
Right.
becoming a little bit open-minded and a little bit more clear on which direction you need to go. So
There was
yeah,
a there, there was a
it'll
really
be
interesting
interesting.
analogy that was from way back when everything used to be illustrated. There used to be illustrators for everything. And then photography came out and it became very cheap to take photographs. And
Mhm.
so photography, it went through the same thing where it was people feared it and it was like, oh my God, it's going to replace people's jobs and it's going to do all of these things. And now we're illustrators are going to be out of a job and you have to adapt, right? The humanity
Mm.
adapted in that way. Now this is going to be a much bigger adaptation, but for all of the people out there that are listening to us, embrace it, understand it, really understand what this actually means. If you haven't used ChatGPT or OpenAI or DeepSeek, use it,
Use it.
try it, understand
Yes.
how to prompt the AI to do things because that's going to be a useful skill as we start moving into the future of this. The more you understand it, the more you can see its limitations, the more you see the possibilities, the more it can spark things that people haven't even thought of, right? You could be the next person that sparks a revolution in AI if you understand to actually use it. And what's really
Right.
interesting as it relates to spirituality is a lot of people are starting to use ChatGPT to give them readings, to give them to understand, just to help them mentally. Like there's so much that it's actually they're actually using stuff like this for. So it's really important to not shy away from it, but to really fully understand it and how you can incorporate it into the things that you're doing on a normal day to day. It's very helpful.
Right. Right. I think as we talked about the last episode, I think they were talking about the human design and going from one incarnation across to another. And, the one that we were in was always about just focusing on only our skill and our talent and valuing work and the worship and we defined our value with work, right? That was the ego identity was that of work. But with this newer incarnation of the cross of the sleeping phoenix, the other one was the cross of planning, right? That's the what we were in, and the new one that's coming in is the sleeping phoenix. It's more of doing things that we want to do for our own personal strength, our own inner wisdom, right? And value within what is within. And the key for the balance of that is to be of service,
Mm-hmm.
right? To be of service, but not servicing somebody else in that way, an entity, a company or corporation. And I just read something that said corporations are are just dead entities, which is a very interesting take on it. That it is a creation of energy, but it's not human. It is
Mm-hmm.
dead, but it carries its energy and it takes the energy from the individual
Mm-hmm.
that work within that corporation to then grow it, but yet the give back isn't the same, right? So it's going to be shifting that into creating your own personal power through your presence and through your inner wisdom. And that will lead you to connect with individuals and smaller pods. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know why I'm using the word pod, but that's what's coming to me, a pod, to then be able to create something that could be beneficial to those that are living around you. Because the larger corporations aren't going to be sustainable anymore, I think,
Well, that's
compared to.
interesting, and a perfect segue to what we're going to be talking about next is if that's the case for corporations, then that's got to be the case for spiritual movements and spirituality itself as well. And so this is one of those things where if you're whatever it is that you're practicing, a lot of the practices have been based on thousands and thousands and thousands of years of doing the same thing over and over
Mhm.
and over and over and over again. And so I feel like we're going to be at a point where there's going to be a clash between these new ideas and then the old ideas that have been around for a very, very long time. And so understanding those and being able to meld those together into something new is going to, I think, be the way that things go, because people aren't going to need, they're going to come in understanding more awake and not having to go through all of that ritual and practice before they get connected. And so
Mhm.
understanding that and going, okay, how do we modify all of these valuable teachings in order to be able to to help this next group move forward in their journey?
Right,
And I think that's
right,
going to be the whoever can get there to do that, I think is going to be probably one of the most groundbreaking in spirituality itself, because right now all I see are like the same. It's the same thing. And people gatekeep a lot.
right,
You have to go
right,
through these 50 million different steps and you have to be
right,
under the
right.
supervision of somebody, blah, blah, blah. Maybe there's some truth to that. But how do you take these things and make it so that it's useful and beneficial to a larger audience of people, especially people that are now more awake? So in this example, Kundalini Yoga is something that I think has been adapted a little bit or kind of changed a little bit from its
Change.
original origins.
Mhm.
But how do you understand it enough in order to be able to actually take that and incorporate it into something else that could be more beneficial?
Right. And I think this is the perfect time for a modality like that because I feel we're going from this performance mindset, which is what we have been in, right? The very talent oriented, your skills, um, working for the company, doing the grind and your performance, and you get an evaluation, and your efficiency and all those things give you a number, and then you get raises from that. So that's all performance, right? Very performative mindset. To now we're going into this learning mindset where we're open, so we can then bring in the information that we need, like literally be able to be clear, to remove all the residue of the conditioning that we've had, to then be able to get the true signals that's coming through, to be able to then move forward to advance, our species, right? And or whatever else it is, save the earth, create whatever it is that we want to create. So that's the new focus, is being able to be clear and open to learn whatever is coming through
Mhm.
us, and then taking it in and expanding it. And um, I think it's more effective for this new generation coming in, because performance, it doesn't mean anything to them anymore. It doesn't mean anything. So they need modalities like this to help to clear and center. And I think even for our generation, and everyone on this planet, we need modalities like yoga, with Kundalini, breath work, all these things to be able to help center our minds and release all of that chatter that has been there, and to be able to bring that calm and centering, to then get the frequency and the connection and the information and messages that we do need to be able to have the clear thought, have the creativity, right? The imagination. It's said that um, when we have our imagination going to create what we want, we're creating new neurons, right? Connections and
Neural
stuff.
pathways.
And then your brain will find it so it could execute, because that's what the brain loves doing. It wants to
Yeah.
help you out, but it also gives you stuff that when you second guess yourself and you doubt yourself, then you're going in this other way. So there's big old confusion. And people like to call it, you confuse the universe, but
Right,
you're
right.
confusing your own brain because you're doubting yourself. So then it's like, oh, I'm in the middle of creating this new neural pathway, and I'm finding these opportunities and openings for you because we have imagined it and created it. But then now you're doubting yourself and you want to go in this direction. Well, what the heck? So that's like the confusion and indecisiveness. So these types of modalities help center you. So then there's not all of that confusion, and there's not
Mm.
any of that residue there, that the emotional residue, I think I'll call it, that's there, that can hinder you from being clear and centered and focused, to be able to bring in the new idea, create something amazing, or have this like aha moment to bring change, right? For support, instead of sticking with those limiting beliefs that I live here, I can only do this, I don't
Hmm.
have any money, all of these kinds of things, that you stay in that reverberation. So I feel that, you know, Kundalini, even though it's been shifted and changed. When they brought it here to the West, there was one person in particular that made it really big here, because he had a whole, like, I want to call it a sample size, a huge sample size of flower children, that were prime and
Mm.
open to receive these things because they wanted change. But also, they were, using drugs and all this stuff to get
Sure.
enlightened, and whatever. And then some of those drugs were used for coping mechanisms and addiction for whatever trauma they went through. But when they used this type of technology in this type of way, it was like entrainment. It gave the brain something to do, it gave the
Yeah.
body something to do by using movement, breath, right? Huge, repetitive sound. I mean, inhalation, pausing, exhalation, pausing, the long exhalation to be able to reset that nervous system, the vagal tone increased, your um, endocannabinoid system tone increased. So you became this, whoa, centered person. But when you're in the process of doing that, you're so connected and sometimes so blissed that someone could be very influential.
Sure.
and want to keep you in that mindset because it
Hmm.
feels good. You want to stay in it. So you don't want to go out into the real world because why am I going to do that? I want to be in this beautifulness here. But that's not the point of that technology. The point of that technology is also to help us advance, help us create, help us live in this physical world here, and reset ourselves through this type of self-care. So I feel that it's an amazing modality. For me, it helped me help prepare me, I think, for a lot of those things that I was to face that were life changing, all that happened within a year, the span of a year, that most people would be knocked over from and not wanting to get up anymore. Um, so I primed my body, myself, my mind, my emotional state. And we'll call all my five coaches were, you know, all hit. So then I could find the resilience in me and create something new for myself and really understand who I was and what I needed to do to move forward, with clarity and without emotional attachment. So I appreciate those kinds of things, and I appreciate all of it, but I know it is also, I don't want to use the word dangerous, but it can be for people and it can become cult-like
Absolutely. Oh,
because
100%.
someone can assign something to it,
Right.
you know, because when you're bringing something new in, you're going to be the guru, you're going to be the head dude, you're going to be the
Yep.
head lady or
People are gonna
priestess or
love
whatever
you.
you want to, yes, whatever you want to call it. And then that power goes to your head and you control all these people and you tell them to wear this, they'll wear this. You tell them to do this, they'll do that because they feel so good. They're going to follow whatever you're going to say.
But see, then becomes about you, not about them. Right.
It
Yeah.
does. It does. It does. And then, that's the phase that we always have been in.
Right.
Follow, 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 follow. Sit in the chair. You have all this energy, you're going to be labeled as being ADD, you're going to be attention, you have no
All
attention. So
labels. All labels.
all
Hmm.
of that because you need to follow whoever is there. you know, yes, rules are important, and yes, you're supposed to follow those, right? That are for the safety
Right.
of people. That I for sure agree with. But some of the stuff that happens in school, like, wow, whose benefit is it for? Is it benefit for the child, or is it benefit for the teacher so they don't go crazy? So anyway, yeah,
Exactly.
that kind of that technology of Kundalini, I think is pretty amazing. And I really feel that it's not what people think it is. You're going to have this whole awakening and it's going to blow your mind. And,
No.
you're never, some people don't come back from it. So it's so scary. And
But see that right there
yeah.
builds up this preconditioning in your head of what it's going to do to you. So you're already going in and thinking is believing. So you go in believing that, and of course shit's going to happen to you. So it's really interesting the idea, because you'd been doing Kundalini for a little bit, so I started doing it just by watching YouTube videos. I'm like, let me do 15 minutes of this breath work, let me do the 15 minutes of this yoga, let me do 20 minutes of this, let me understand what breath of fire means, let me understand what this breathing is, let me understand. And so going through it from that standpoint, the after you do this, the after effects is what I think you kind of need help processing, because what it does is it brings up a lot of emotion. First time you do it, you just get a lot of emotion and you feel like you're in this state of, like, I don't know, it's like in between. You're in this in
Yeah.
between state and it feels good, and you like it,
Mm-hmm.
and you're like, whoa, this is actually cool. I feel you know jittery and lightheaded and all of the stuff, but there's a science behind it. It's not
It's a physiological
it's a
effect in the body.
physiological effect, and i think
Yeah.
and i think that's where it can get dangerous, is when people assign this mysticism to it. They're
Mm-hmm.
like, oh my god, there's this like whole mystic thing to it and it's magic, and that dude knows how to access the magic for me. No. It's you.
You.
It's all you. And so just, I think for things like this, for modalities like this, it's important to understand it take the time to really do some research. And if you're going to go to somebody, vet them to make sure that, they have your best interests in mind. And it's not just about them selling this one thing or selling themselves or gathering a cult group or whatever that is, because ultimately they're trying to help you on your journey. That should be the goal, by teaching you these modalities that help you center yourself. And
Right.
it shouldn't
Right.
just be this. They should encourage you to try a lot of other modalities, because I think one of the things that can go wrong with this is people can get hooked, and they're like, this is the only thing. And this is the only way that I can achieve this enlightenment. And they get hooked on the body's response to it
Yeah.
because it feels good. But
Hmm.
that's not it. You're getting hooked on the feeling of it. It's not, you're not growing anymore. Now it just becomes
Right.
you wanting to chase that high again.
Hmm.
And I think that's where it can go really wrong.
Yeah, that's, I feel like some people can use it more as a coping mechanism and a way of performing versus being able to do the work with the things that do come up because it brings things to surface. And are you dealing with those things? That's why it's good to have a integrator, which is usually your leader, which is
Yeah.
your teacher.
The person to
That's
hold the
why it's
space
wise
for
to
you.
have some, right. It's wise to have a teacher when you're doing these types of
Mm-hmm.
work because somatically you're moving stuff. You're
Right.
moving things through the body, whatever energy got stuck, whatever emotion got stuck within, because that's what happens. And you're going through these layers of yourself and you're bringing them up and you're trying to release them and you're trying to like relax your nervous system because it's been shock for so long.
Mm-hmm.
And just think about if you're in this uh hyper aroused state for so long and you do this modality and then it gets dropped, your heart rate goes down, and then you're just, oh, what the hell just happened, right? It's scary. You can get taken out that way, right?
I can't even imagine what it would be like if I had done this first without doing all of the work that I've done to release traumas and do all of that stuff. And if I had just gone into this, man,
Yeah.
I can't even imagine. It would just be a basket case for a while,
Yeah.
because everything would just come, and you wouldn't understand why it's all happening. Right? It would.
And the important thing with this is you're combining like the breath and the movement. So important with the movement to be able to release those things that are in the body, release that extra energy because that's how animals do that when they're in fight or flight. Because you could have that response with the breath work. You can
Oh
have the
yeah.
fight or flight response, and you're going to panic. And the movement is what allows that to move through you
Yes.
so that you could settle yourself again. So that is why it is such an amazing modality or technology, you can call it. Let's call it technology. Um, but it also has to be supported and you be in an environment that's conducive to be able to
Mhm.
help you with it because it is something that can be amazing. But if you haven't done the work and you've been conditioned with whatever from
Mhm.
childhood, from church, whatever that is, it could push you to revert back to that because you may feel things that aren't sitting right anymore because it has come from deep down inside and it's too scary to bring up. So then
Oh yeah.
you bail.
Oh yeah,
You
because
bail.
we I think we both had some interesting experiences. Like you had an experience. Why don't you talk about that so that people understand what
Which one? Which
the kid
one?
one, the
Oh,
teenager one.
yeah, yeah. I think that so this is what I know when we're breathing and you're doing any kind of breath, like equal breath and down rhythmic breathing, and you're
Hmm.
pulling your diaphragm, expanding, contracting, expanding, contracting. You're moving that cerebral spiral, no fluid up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down. So it's finally like trying to relax that nervous system. And in the same way, it brings out many things that have been hidden in there, right? That have created that nervous system to be on edge. Let's just say that. So for me, that was interesting how it was released in a type of attachment. I don't know what the best
Entity,
entity,
yeah, energy.
whatever that
It manifested.
energy
The energy
that,
manifested.
yeah,
Mhm.
of a young man that was so desperate for me not to do it.
Mhm.
And it literally like shook me like this in bed. But all I could do, and I was laughing because before that would have scared the crap out of me, maybe 5 years ago, 10 years ago. That all I was doing was smiling. And I was like, no, no, you can go. You can go. And it was just like, no, nothing's gonna break this, right? That limiting belief of that, whatever attachment that was, whatever I was carrying from, who knows what, from the house what we lived in,
Yes,
all that. The
that's
the
what it was.
OBE.
That's what it
Yeah.
was.
Yeah, the not OBE. Oh my gosh, UB, right? And
Hmm.
um yeah, it was deeply attached. It was deeply embedded. And that was, I think this is very interesting. I think that was the dark that I feared, that it kept on getting keeping me in that fear state, right?
Hmm.
So there was this big release and it was like day two of my training because I'm doing training. Uh, and I was like, wow, that was like something. And I told my partner that and it was like seriously a physical experience and visual and
Hmm.
all of that that was like something out of desperation trying to say no, trying to say no. And it's just like, no, there's no more room for you here because
Exactly. It's time for you
you
to
can
leave.
release you can release these things. And that's what IFS does with these UBs. It's the person that releases them.
Yeah.
The practitioner just holds space for them.
Yeah,
So
because it's
this,
it's energetic trauma of some sort that's stored in your body that you have to release. And
right,
it takes whatever
right,
form is in the
uh-huh,
mind. Whatever
right,
form that you have that you created, that's the form it takes. And
right.
so at that
And
point
yeah.
you have to release it. You understand how to actually release it.
And then sometimes I think this happens to us when we're so young
Mm,
that they we perceive them as being protectors
yes.
of us, but they're not part of us. And that's where the big question mark is. But we don't realize that that's what it is. But yeah, that was an interesting experience for sure. But because I'm seeing myself in my mind's eye laying in bed and seeing it
Yep.
all happen. And
Yep.
it's like literally moving me in bed. And it's a pretty strong entity that had been there for such a long time and in such desperation to not leave. But
Mhm.
it needed to. And then I asked for it to go where, into the light and, find its way to who he has always been, their who he or their energy has always been in original light form,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So yeah, that was huge. But then the other thing that I did experience was the recognition that doing these types of modalities can go to your head. Let's just say it can be
Mm,
like you want to be in bliss all the time. And,
yes.
why am I doing all this stuff? And just like when you come out of ayahuasca, you're like, oh, I want to be a facilitator or I want to do all these things. Da, 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 da. Because you feel so, so good. Um, and you see things through a different light, but you have to always remember that you're in control of yourself,
Hmm.
right? You're in control of yourself and you live in this world and it's about your presence. And this can be used as a self care
Yeah.
modality and it's not meant to run your life.
It's not. It's not. And I think
Not meant-
that what happens with people is they get depressed with living in their life. It's
Yeah.
a depression. They're depressed with existence because they're so used to living in this altered state that that's what they want. And when they come out of it, it's like, this is not what I want. And so, yeah, they'll do whatever it takes to do that, whatever. They'll chase everything. And I think that's where you have a challenge with modalities like this, or with any kind of modality that you want to use, whether it's, you're looking at
Meditation or whatever.
hallucinogens.
Mm.
People get love mushrooms and DMT, and they get wanting to do it more and more and more, but they don't understand that it's not about that, right?
Right.
You're just
Right. It's
chasing
all
a high
about,
at that point.
right. And it's all about how you integrate it
Mm-hmm.
and how you're bringing it into this world, how you're showing up with it, right? Not being in this world. Like, yeah, of course, you could say the same cliche where our whole point is to be in this world. That is why we're here. We're not meant to be over there. That will happen when we're no longer in this body. We'll
Mm-hmm.
go there. But we're meant to be here, and we're meant to do things, and we're meant to support the next generation coming in. We're meant to create and help evolve. Um, but if you're wanting to be in that state, you're not going to function. You're not going to function. You're not going to function. It is, how can I put it? I've seen people go mad in that way,
Mm-hmm.
right? I've seen people go
Sure.
mad and uh so they're chasing it, they're chasing it, and they're chasing it, and they want to stay in it, and they want to stay in it. And um, we're not meant to be that way.
No, no,
We're not
we are
meant to
not.
be that
We're
way.
not. We're not meant to be in that state. I think part of the growth is learning and understanding how to connect with that state, with your higher self, and in the grid or whatever it is that you want to call it, so that you can have a better understanding of how to do your journey and what the purpose of your journey is. It kind of helps you, give you more perspective that way. Gives you insight, gives you visions, gives you whatever it is that you need at that time. But you can't live in it forever. I mean, while you're here, at least.
Yeah, I think that what this really is, and I think what it's meant from thousands of years ago, is that it's meant to help our vessel. It's meant to help our vessel
Yes.
stay healthy.
Yeah.
And it's meant for us to be able to remove these things that happen to us,
Right. And
remove all
it's
that
meant
residue.
to really help you energetically hold more, like
Yeah.
more capacity for you to do and more energy means that you can do more things
Yes. And have a balance,
and
you know,
have balance,
balance,
because if not,
have
then
balance, have balance of your channels. And
what's the most interesting breath work form that you've used in Kundalini? Like the one that just really, every time you
oh,
do it, you're
I
just like, oh wow, that was.
what I for me, like, I really, really get into a space when I do the long echo cars, and there's a reason why. Because when you chant, it could be any sound, because when what is happening is that you're taking an inhalation, long inhalation in, and then when you're chanting, it's this long exhalation. So
Mm-hmm.
it's very similar to bumblebee breath, Brahmari breath. That long exhalation out. So that long exhalation, what it does, it gets you into that parasympathetic system.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you retain at the bottom, you know, um, that is where you're allowing all the cells to oxygenate. Those pauses, because we have four parts of our breath, and people don't really know that. We have that inhalation, we have the pause at the top, and then
Yep.
the exhalation and the pause at the bottom. And our pauses are very subtle and automatic,
Yeah.
right? Some people um, rapid breathe too much. They're in that hyperventilation
Mm-hmm.
because they're in that aroused state, so their body doesn't completely oxygenate. So that's how come a lot of things do happen. So these the reason why this works, one of the reasons why this works is because it does that. It allows the body to rejuvenate, allows the cells to regenerate, it allows you to go into the parasympathetic to be able to then reset. So when I do that, I usually get so relaxed that I want to like lay down and
Oh.
go to sleep. I get so relaxed, I want to lay down and go to sleep. And then there's another one. that I do, and I find this very successful uh, in a lot of male clients, is doing breath of fire
Breath of
because
fire.
that's re-energizing. And but not only doing breath of fire, but doing ego eradicator. Um, when you bring your arms up
Yeah,
and
yeah.
this,
That was
and
hard. That was really
it
hard.
is it is a discipline. It is a discipline.
Yes, yeah,
But you're like pumping, go, go, go. And the inhalation and the exhalation are same, in and out, in and
yeah,
out, in and out. And that's just generating energy, energy, energy. And you're pulling everything out and you're bringing everything out and it's releasing and releasing and releasing. And then when you bring that arms down, then, and I ask, like, feel your body, just feel the energy going through you and what you've created and allowing that integration of that. And doing that repetitively daily for a certain amount of time, for 30 days, 45 days, you create this entrainment and you're creating healing for the body. So I find that to be also pretty amazing. It just depends. Satali breath, it's the curled tongue. When you
yeah. That
have
one.
anger, to cooling breath to cool
Right.
within the inside. It just depends what's going on within the body. Subtle breath is very, very good. People don't realize that. And this is just part of breath work, just covering one
Oh yeah,
nostril and
the nostril.
slowly
Yeah.
through one nostril, in and out through one nostril. That's all you have to do to settle your body. The other one is obviously the
Rotating
Nadi
between the
Shodra,
nostril.
the like alternate nostril
Yeah.
breathing. And there's many, many things to help us be able to reset our nervous system in very, very simple ways. And then you add the movements to it, which makes it even more amazing,
Hmm.
combining those two. And then when you add the chant and the vibration,
Yeah, you
it
just
like settles, settle, settle. And then you open up into this like, wow, wow, wow. For me, when I do my sadhana, the full morning,
hmm
um, a lot of times I get information and clarity
yeah, because
when
you're open.
you're
Yeah.
open. And yeah, like I said, when I first learned this a long time ago, it really it prepared me for COVID because I heard I needed to do something to be able to handle what was to come. Because I always get these different messages and I'm like, okay, like, and I searched for it. And then I learned from a woman that I identified with because she was a person of color.
Right.
You don't see that in the yoga world a lot. So I could identify with her, because that it's almost like you have to resonate, right, with people. And
Sure.
I started learning these things. And it after the 40 days, I was like, wow, this calmness and non-reactiveness came through, and being able to take in the information that I was receiving and not letting it take me,
Right.
hijack me, and being able to respond in a way that needed to happen, um, and with full clarity, not by other people's emotions or whatever chaos was happening around me. And it helped me through those transitions of 2020, 2021, 2022. Those post-COVID years as well within the medical system were pretty heavy. But add personal life being heavy as well, that's a double whammy that you're getting. Lots of chaos, lots of stuff. So it it was what I found, um, to be one of the modalities that was super, super helpful. And we'll just say this: the combination of breath work, the combination of Kriya, meaning movement, right, with the breath, and then yoga, all
Super
together.
helpful.
It's super helpful. And Kundalini Yoga combines that. Um, Tantra yoga, Kriya yoga. Those are the different types or names that you can
Types.
explore.
Yeah.
Um, but they all fall into the yoga.
And I think what's interesting is you take the things that work for you, the things
Mm-hmm.
that resonate a lot with you, and then you incorporate them
Whatever
into
resonates.
something that works
Right.
for your
Yeah,
nervous system and
because
your
your
body.
mind, yep, because your mind will get bored if it doesn't like it.
Yeah, no, it'll be
If it
like,
doesn't like it, it'll
I'm
say,
good.
or even what it'll do is sometimes it'll go and revert back to the failure that they've tried before. Oh, I've tried this before and I
Right,
failed,
right.
And so I don't need that in my life, like meditation. Oh, I don't need that. It failed. I couldn't stand it because I couldn't do it. No one can meditate like that in the beginning. That's
No,
like
no.
impossible. No whether you're not
And
going to be
there's
this amazing
I
meditator.
think what people don't understand is with stuff like Kundalini and the breathing exercises, your mind focuses on the breathing, right? It's focusing on these things, so
Yeah.
it keeps it distracted from everything else. It's just focusing on the breath, especially if you're doing like rapid breathing or holding your
Mhm.
breath or exhalations, and you're constantly doing that. It can only think about that. It's like it can only, I'm doing this. I'm counting the rhythm, the rhythm, the rhythm. It's meant to keep your mind's attention on
Yeah.
that and not
On that.
the 50
Yeah.
million things that you're trying to do
That
and
is
your mind
happening.
wanders.
Hmm.
Right. And I think
And it's
that's a
all,
good
the
thing.
majority of it is through the nose.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned this from someone, and it's an interesting, very, very interesting thing. Um, so I learned two sides, the one through almost like a science part of it, and
Mm-hmm.
another one more towards the spiritual, like it goes through the nose because of the cilia. The cilia are what quiver, and they're the first indicator to your nervous system of what's coming in,
Right.
right? So that's the science behind it, right? That vibration that comes through and it's filtering, right?
Yeah.
It's an
Yeah.
amazing
It's all
filter. So we
vibration.
don't, and so it cleans the air and the oxygen for us to be
Right.
able to take in optimally. So optimal breathing, right? That's why you're breathing through your nose. So spiritually, the cilia vibrate. It's the first touch of the life force energy,
Mm-hmm.
and it vibrates through. And the vibration sets up the nervous system to receive, right? That spiritual energy, that the life force energy. So I think they're both the same.
Mm-hmm.
They're both the same. It's
I
just
agree.
spoken to in a different way.
Yeah.
And then,
What I find really fascinating about the the breathing part is I really like on the exhale, the hold on the exhale and holding it, because it just feels like everything's released, and then you
mhm,
hold it there and you hold it as long as you can. I mean,
as
some
long
people
as you
can hold
can,
it. Yeah.
not to where you're like, not that. It's like the first where you first start
Yeah, where you're starting to
feeling
feel like yeah, then you let it
discomfort.
go.
That's
And you
when
get
you let
better,
go.
and you get better over
Yeah,
time.
yeah,
You can hold
you
it
do.
longer.
Yeah, because we're supposed to really be breathing like maybe 5 to 6, not 12
Hmm.
breaths per minute.
So if you can hold it for
For
like a
optimal
minute,
breathing.
30
Like a minute, 30
seconds,
seconds.
you're doing
I
pretty
can
good.
hold pretty good. My inhalation, because I've been doing this for a while. Yeah, my inhalation is very expansive, and my exhalation, depending on different ways. I've been trying to learn how it feels when you're on your stomach to use your back body, the
Oh,
back of your
interesting.
lungs
Yeah.
to expand. So, because most people think, oh my gosh, I can't breathe. But you have this whole back area that you forget
You
that
can
your lungs
expand
can
that.
inflate
Yeah.
behind
Yeah.
you. Um, all these things. And, I'll throw this in here. I did Reiki for a nurse week for a hospital, and their head of security came in and he was a little freaked out. Uh, what to expect. I'm like, oh, and just explained it a little bit to him. And I used, the singing bowl at first to settle the body, and then gave Reiki, and then I asked them to do a breath, inhalation, pause at the top, and long exhale, and I did this three breaths, and then settling into a regular breath, trying to get them into um, to receive, but also going into their own breath, right, and returning to it. And he was a tough one, like
Hmm.
energetically, because he was pushing back a little bit. I'm like, okay, finally I settled down and I said, allow yourself to receive. This is why you're here. Nobody's forced you to be here. You made the decision to come. But if you're not ready to receive, then what are you doing here? Right? There's no point in me fighting your energy. I'm not going to do that.
No.
Like, you just be open to receive, allow yourselves to receive the selves, yourselves, because that's what they're saying. Allow yourselves cells to receive the energy, that extra energy to help it recuperate. And then I went on and telling him some certain things that came up because I told him, like, I feel this warrior energy coming off of you. What's up with that? And then he told me he was in the military. It's like, oh man, you're working on my knees. And then I felt like I spun around. And so he went into this thing that he was going through because he needed to be straightened because he
Yeah.
was off. And the energy does this, right? And then he goes, it made me remember, like in the military, that they taught us how to breathe because I
Hmm.
saw guys stop bleeding. They tell us to warrior breath. So basically it's kind of breath of
Yeah.
fire,
Yeah.
warrior breath to go within, because that's what he said, to go
Go
within,
within. Hmm.
to slow yourself down. You pump yourself up with breath of fire, but then you slow your breath down also
Hmm.
when you're injured or whatever to be able to stop that breathing, reset the nervous system so that it's not in shock anymore. So I told him, see, that's what your body's telling you. That's what it said. Allow
It needs
yourself
that.
your cells to receive what it needs to. You know what to do. You know you're able to do this. This stuff is being used to be able to help, right? It's just people forget. Is people forget. So they just need a reminder. And sometimes we do what's called doing these small relapses of going back to what we used to be and forgetting about these things. But that's normal. That's part of life, right? So whenever we run into some things, you can always revert back to these types of practices to
Yeah, and
help.
it's a practice. I mean, you can use it, and you should use it every day if you can.
Right. And then it, and then you'll start feeling, how your body feels and it feels good. Sometimes it's hard in the beginning. Meditation's not easy.
Yep.
It's can't just drop in. Takes a little bit. Even 1 minute is hard. Start with 30 seconds. But I think that breath is one of the easier things, but it has to be the right breath
Hmm.
for someone that is very, very hyper aroused. That a ego eradicator would not be a wise idea to use with them. You know, they may need a subtle breath or they need a vibration to help settle, right?
Hmm.
So there's reasons for all these different
Yep.
types of breathing techniques to be able to support the body, and it helps us understand how our breath works, or that our diaphragm does exist. It should be coming up with us when we breathe, not our chest. It should be our belly. And so there's whole science behind it, that the ancients knew and named it a certain thing.
Yeah, I think that that's one of the things that as you keep understanding your practice and you develop it, you understand your body. You start understanding your body and the energy that's you. And so when you go out and you something triggers you, you can feel the disruption in your energy. And so you're like,
Mhm.
okay, now I have to go and do something about it. And that's where practice comes in.
Mhm.
That's where you're like, okay, I can take 5 minutes and get myself settled again
Well,
by
yeah,
doing these exercises to help me. Whatever works for you, whatever you
whatever
decide
works.
works for you, right? And then you go do it. Then you come back and you're like, all right, I'm good. I'm good. So you don't have to live the rest of your day like that, where it's just all over the place.
Yeah, yeah. You can do it walking, all of that kind of stuff. That long exhalation
Mm-hmm.
is where it's at. That's the reset right there. And it doesn't cost anything. It's your own body that's doing it.
Yeah, so I would sum it up by saying don't be afraid of these modalities or technologies, if you want to call them technologies, ancient technologies. Don't be afraid. Understand them. Take some
Right,
time, research
right.
some of those, try some basic stuff, and then, if there's somebody that you want to reach out to them and vet them and make sure that they resonate with you, because I think that's the connection between the person who's the teacher and the person who's learning has to be good, or else, I think challenging things can happen as a result of it not being a good resonance between the two.
Right. Always, always listen to your inner self, your inner wisdom. Like every time I finish one of my kriyas or meditations, you know, I bow to my own inner wisdom, you know, and I ask for it to continue to guide me, but I also ask for myself to be able to hear, right?
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
sometimes
yeah.
I don't hear. And then I bow to my heart center so that it continues to guide with compassion and love, because that's the way, right? So I'm acknowledging myself that I am my own teacher, because I'm the one that is experiencing life,
Right, right.
and the experiencer is how you learn, right? The experience. So always remembering that go within, and then once you become more and more aware of yourself. Sometimes it's hard. I agree, it's hard. Carlos and I are what? We're half a decade
Yep, yep,
in
yep. And
this
still
lifetime.
learning, still
I'm
learning.
still learning.
So I think before we close this podcast, I think it'll be very, very relevant and important for you to share a very simple breathing exercise, because people want to know, is there something simple that you can
Yeah.
take
Oh, yeah.
our audience through?
Simple, simple, simple.
Hmm.
So bumblebee breath, but I don't think I don't know if it's gonna pick up the the humming.
Oh,
So
probably not.
usually originally the hand placement is like these in these windows, right? The windows they call
Hmm.
up here, like right here at the nostril and down here. That's how the hand placements were before. But what you could do is actually take your thumbs and close the pinna right here of your
Yep,
ear,
yep.
and then kind of curl your fingers and you breathe in. And you exhale through your nose, you make a humming sound. Mm. Breath in again.
Mm.
Breath in again through your nose. Mm. Continue humming until you can. Mm. And then just bringing your hands down. You can do
Cool.
that for a minute, 3 minutes, and it'll bring more clarity and relaxation. Super, super simple.
That's really simple, but it's good. I think it's a good starting
And
point.
it's the humming that helps that long exhalation.
Hmm.
So some people may think that I can't exhale out that long
Oh,
through
yes,
my
you
nose.
can.
But when you're humming, you can.
You totally can.
So that's what switches the brain off, right? And it shuts off the mind story that we give ourselves that we can't do
Hmm.
this. And it's something that we used to do when we were kids. Remember?
Yeah. Mm.
I can hear myself inside me. The vibration
And
is
on
good.
that note, thank you guys for tuning in. I hope this was helpful to you. If you
Yes.
have any
Yes.
questions about Kundalini, anything related to yoga or any of that stuff, feel free to reach out. We're more than happy to help.
Peace out.
Peace out.